How's it going, everybody? I hope you're all having a wonderful day. I'm a mess, and today I wanted to talk about an anime genre that is very near and dear to my heart. This genre is neck and neck with the shonen genre in terms of how much I like them. So I'm going to be discussing the significance of this genre, its downsides, and all in all, why I like it so much. Okay, enough beating around the bush. You all know from the title, we are talking about Isekai animes today. Now, the reason I wanted to do a video on Isekai animes is because of a certain show that just recently aired that really got me thinking about what makes an Isekai. For those of you who don't know, Isekai in English means another world. And what defines an Isekai is that the protagonist ends up in another world, typically by getting hit by a truck and getting reincarnated in a fantasy setting. They could also just wake up there not knowing how they got there, or teleport via getting summoned, or a teleportation device. You get the gist of it. Now, Isekais have been getting a bad rap as of late due to its very generic and repetitive narrative, as well as the fact that it glorifies escapism, which makes the hate completely warranted. However, there is a deeper meaning to a good Isekai. I fully intend to analyze and explain the genre, as well as discuss some of the shows that really stand out from this category. Before I get into what makes an Isekai great, I am first going to talk about why people don't like them. For you see, the Isekai genre became popular overnight. After a single anime series came out, every single anime studio wanted to jump on the craze. The hype train was real because every season after that, we had like 2 or 3 new Isekais come out. And of course, with the sudden influx of Isekais, the narratives started to repeat themselves. We will get a shut-in who got teleported or reincarnated or whatever the case may be, he somehow ended up in another world, and the protagonist, would either have some incredible power or be some type of prodigy who learns quickly and redefines what is considered common knowledge. These type of shows started popping up every season, and their only selling point would be that they were an Isekai with an overpowered protagonist. Not only were their shows bland and told a story that had already been told several times over, but they also make ignoring your problems and escaping into a fantasy look like a good thing. Like I said earlier, it glorifies escapism. Escapism, for those of you who don't know, is when someone doesn't want to deal with something, so they get away from it by seeking some type of entertainment in something that is purely fantasy, which is not healthy for a person's psyche. It causes the person to not be able to grow and develop, just like some of the protagonists from these shows. Also, some of the shows were an Isekai in name alone. They didn't really take advantage of the original world, so they could have been a fantasy anime instead, but they slapped a reincarnation or a teleportation at the beginning of the story just to join the trend. A lot of fans, including myself, don't like that because the show really loses out on a lot of its potential because they don't really focus on the protagonist's previous life. His old world is just there as a background story. It doesn't really affect the life he's living. One of the best or maybe worst examples of this would be the wise man's grandchild. I pretty much described this story with my earlier explanation. It is an isekai that only uses a little of the knowledge from the protagonist's, Shin Wolfor's, old world for the sake of allowing him to cast unique spells. What hurts the show so much is its lack of character development. Shin doesn't really have room to grow because he's already the strongest magician in the world by the time he starts high school. He also doesn't think about his previous life at all. He treated his reincarnation like it was normal and didn't really care about his previous life anymore. If the show didn't include the reincarnation at the beginning, it honestly would have been better. It would have given Shin a lot more room to grow, learn, and develop. But because he has memories of science from his old world, he doesn't need to grow because he's already reached the peak of development the moment he was born. And since he was not really thinking about his previous life, like at all, there was nothing for him to fix that hindered him before coming to this new world. It takes away from an isekai's core principle, the experiences and hardship they faced during their previous life. Now, I'll be getting into an isekai's strong points and what it needs to be great and enjoyable to watch. Like I just stated, an isekai's strong point is the existence of the previous life. Who were they? What did they do? How does starting their life anew benefit or hinder them? All of these matter because it shapes the character for the moment they are born. The best example I can give here would be Natsuki Subaru from ReZero. From this point on, I will be going into spoiler territories, especially for the second season. I will post a timestamp for when I stop talking about ReZero, so skip to this time if you don't want to be spoiled. Okay, so Natsuki Subaru was teleported to another world and he didn't have any powers. He was a normal human just like he was when he left his house. He didn't have any magic or superhuman strength. Despite this, he didn't despair. He continued to live his life the best he could. He met a half-elf named Amelia, and he fell for her right away. She was chasing a thief who had stolen her pendant, and Subaru, wanting to thank her for helping him, offered to lend her his aid. Eventually, they tracked the pendant to a shady bar where they were both killed by an unknown assailant. Subaru ended up waking up back in the city, and he later learned that time had rewinded to before he met Emilia. He learned that he has an ability to go back in time when he dies. This allowed him to have multiple attempts to figure out a way to move forward and help all of those he could. As a result of him dying numerous times, he ended up devolving and losing himself. He ended up making a total ass of himself in front of Emilia as a result of it. Now you may be wondering, what does this have to do with his previous life? I'm glad you asked. For you see, in part 1 of season 2, we see what Subaru's life was like before he got isekai'd. Growing up, he was always compared to his father, which caused him to act in an outlandish way to stand out. However, his personality was too much for people to handle, and it drove them away. He ended up becoming a shut-in who locked himself away in his room. After he got isekai'd, he had a change in perspective. He started putting all of his efforts into helping Emilia, but he screwed up and embarrassed Emilia when he was merely trying to defend her. He ended up losing himself because he felt like his efforts were being ignored, similarly to how he was ostracized by his classmates in his previous world. He does come to the conclusion that he was being full of himself and apologized, to which Emilia forgave him, of course. After hearing all of that, let's take a look at the underlying tone of the show. It focuses on Natsuki Subaru as he is teleported to another world. He still carries the trauma from his past life and struggles because of his insecurities. Despite that, he continues to move forward. He may stumble from time to time, but his actions have gotten him some reliable friends who support him whenever he loses sight of himself. This all leads to the main point of the video, in discussing the deeper meaning of an isekai. Now, isekais have a not so hidden meaning to them. They make escaping reality into a fantasy look like the right thing to do. The protagonists of an isekai tend to go from a depressing and difficult life to a comfortable and easy one where they can defeat anyone who causes them trouble. This literally displays the escapism concept of avoiding reality because it's too much to bear sometimes. It takes people who were struggling and places them in an environment that is much simpler and easier for them to live in. This is the negative aspect of an isekai. But what if I told you there is a positive aspect as well? For you see, it's all a matter of perspective. If you look at it as a character running away from reality, then you get escapism. But if you look at it as people changing the environment they live in from one full of negativity to one full of positivity, then they are simply placing themselves in a position to succeed. The characters like Natsuki Subaru use the opportunity of being isekai to better themselves. They found a world where they themselves can overcome their previous traumas and move forward. Earlier in the video, I talked about an anime that inspired the making of this video. I'm assuming you all have guessed by now that it was Mushuko Tensei, Jobless Reincarnation. I love this show because of how it depicted Rudius's previous life as a kid who was bullied to the point that he was afraid to leave his house. We witnessed it early on when his master Roxy was trying to take him into the village. He was absolutely terrified at first, but with the aid of his master, he was able to overcome his trauma and take the next step. The show does an amazing job of depicting real life issues like bullying and how it can mentally damage someone. And it showed how changing one's environment can affect their mentality. Of course, changing your environment alone wouldn't fix all of the problems and underlying issues. One requires a change in their thought process as well. If someone wanted to change but wasn't motivated to actually put in the effort to improve, they would simply fall back into their old ways. A perfect example of this would be in Konusuba. Now, the protagonist, Kazuma, was reincarnated to help defeat the Demon Lord, but he isn't really motivated to. He would rather spend his time trying to live as comfortably as possible. Granted, he still works hard, but not at what he's supposed to. Eventually, he finds a diary belonging to someone else who was isekai'd. He read that this person had the ability to create anything he can think of. At first, this other person was motivated to create a weapon to kill the Demon Lord, but he eventually realized he didn't care enough and resorted back to his old shut-in ways. This was a perfect example of how a person's mentality affects their drive. Kazuma was motivated to live a comfortable life, so he worked very hard to make as much money as possible, while the unnamed person gave up and resorted to building a robot girl instead. Isekais showcase what a change in your surroundings can do for you. Life is challenging, but running away is not the solution. Placing yourself in a positive environment and surrounding yourself with supportive friends will help motivate you to better yourself. If you stay in a toxic environment, you can never improve. Making a change is hard, but it's better than staying in the same place. Make a change and move forward. That is what I believe is the deep meaning behind an isekai. The isekai genre is one that is easy to hate. All of the negative aspects of it are in your face, from having a bland protagonist to repetitive storytelling. All of this just makes the genre generic and predictable. Also, on the surface, it looks like the show encourages people to escape reality rather than face it. To me, isekais are the definition of changing your thought process to better yourself. Moving on from negativity to focus on the positives will make it easier to grow and develop. That's how the protagonists started enjoying their lives. Remember, some of them were miserable and didn't know how to move forward. The moment they entered another world, they started progressing and making a real change to better themselves. I don't believe that all isekais are like this, but the good ones that fully take advantage of the existence of the previous life are. They fully demonstrate the concept of changing your environment to motivate yourself to improve. So there you have it, folks. That was my take on the isekai genre. I hope you all enjoyed the video. I look forward to seeing you all in the next one, and remember to keep having fun. See ya!